Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think I have like time. You shouldn't get any because it's not.
Look sharp. The meeting, committee of the whole, meeting of December 18th is called to order at 7:29 p.m. Paul, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
I'd be honored to. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunas Chish.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Madam Clerk, will you please call roll?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Ms. Atkinson.
Here.
Walakidoc.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Bryson.
Present.
Ms. Hughes-Gandes.
Here.
Ms. Wall.
Present.
Mr. Kelly.
Here?
Deputy Mayor Hill.
Here.
And Mayor Weldon.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any changes to the agenda as written? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. There are no minutes. We'll move right into the first agenda topic. Madam Manager, will you please walk us through the first agenda topic?
Thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is really just to get some direction and update the body on next steps for downtown CBJ employees. The Public Works and Facilities Committee heard this at their November meeting and forwarded it to the Committee of the Whole. As you know, the current building that we're sitting in houses less than 40% of CBJ's downtown employees. We're also housed in the Marine View building, the lease of which is expiring June 30 of this year, housed in the Muni Way building, which Sealaska has purchased for some of their programs. So we do have a 5-year lease with them. We also are in the Seadrome building, which is where Docks and Harbors is. So the purpose of this memo is to introduce to the entire body the idea of going out for a request for information to the community for a number of different scenarios of CBJ downtown office space. So you'll see there's 4 different scenarios there, and they range from just moving some city employees to a different office space. We feel like Marine View is probably the most urgent because of the lease expiration date and because of the OSHA violations there with safe drinking water and bathrooms. But then also, what would it look like to move a different suite of CBJ employees to different facilities? And the idea is that we would be able to issue this RFI as soon as tomorrow. You have a draft in your packet, and then in the near future, we'd bring the responses back to the body, and the body could decide, let's move forward with looking at an X, Y, or a Z scenario. And I think any one of just to what we haven't talked about in this memo is this building here. And I think that really knowing what the universe is out there for leased property will dictate how we talk about investing in this building. But I just want to, as you talk about our fund balance expenditures and the $16.3 million that's set aside for City Hall, we think about some both improvements to this facility if we're going to stay here in some capacity. And I'm not talking fix the foundation, fix the HVAC. but there are improvements that will need to be made. So you just keep that in mind as you move forward. And then there will be a cost associated with moving, IT, tenant improvements, furniture, those types of things. So just keep making sure that we consider those. So that's just an overview of what we're moving forward with, so we can give staff, so staff can give the assembly accurate information on possible next steps. I do want to mention that our overall annual rental cost is pretty low for industry standards, so we do expect to have to pay more with a different option, but of course hope to control that cost as much as possible. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we go to questions, I know that probably every single person in this room has opinions about where we might end up, and I'd rather wait for the RFI results to come back to us before we, as a body, talk about that. So if you could please limit your questions to what's in the memo. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scenario 1 talks about moving everybody, and we'd be looking for an assembly chambers, but we also are a very short supply of conference room. Has that been taken in account for scenario 1, 2, and 3?
Madam Manager.
Yes, we would make sure there would be a conference room available. Right now, between the two buildings, we have at least 3 conference rooms that we use on a regular basis.
Ms. Euskandis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just had a question about the lease length. So I'm looking on page 4 of the packet. Makes sense, we've got to give some kind of parameters. I'm just wondering if it feels limiting to have that many renewal options or that many renewal terms, or if there's a way to say that that would include a shorter. Or maybe you could talk about your thinking behind that.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. I'd love to, because I struggled with what to put here. It would be realistic to have an initial 10-year term to be able to recoup the cost of moving and some of the tenant improvements. We'll put a 5-year term there, just knowing that it's dynamic. We live in a dynamic place. There's lots of different opportunities that might come up, but also realizing that the intention isn't to go back for any big capital purchases or new facilities in the near future. I really think that even if, let's say in the next 5 years, the Assembly wants to start talking about what a city-owned facility would look like, not necessarily a new city hall, but a city-owned facility, it would still take multiple years to work that through the process. So really, it was just my best guess at trying to maintain that flexibility for the who knows what opportunities might present themselves, but also recognize that there will be a significant investment in moving. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I think that's helpful. I appreciate that. I guess my only comment I'd offer to the body would be, that sounds realistic to me, and maybe if something, 25 years, I'd like to think that even the pace of government that we might get there before 25 years, and then maybe if something was available for 15, that still might be a good home as we got towards whatever that is.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Euskandis. I believe, and Mahal Gadak, you're next, but I believe we also have a clause in our leases that we can terminate with short notice.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hale. Every year's lease payment is subject to appropriation by the Assembly because, of course, we can't commit future assemblies.
Thank you. Mahal Gadak.
Yeah, when I was reading this, I was trying to figure out, Ms. Kester, do you want us to weigh in on the 3 different, is your intent to put out the RFI with the 3 different scenarios, or do you want us to whittle it down so that there's only one scenario going out the door? I'm just trying to figure out how best to, weigh in on this conversation.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. Our intent is to put out the 3 different scenarios unless directed differently by the body.
Are there further questions or comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Madam Mayor.
I had to look real quickly. I would move to approve issuing the request for information for available office space in the community.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, Madam Manager, you have your instruction from the Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the second item on the agenda, and I see we have several people from Eagle Crest here. Madam Manager, can you get us started on the alternative procurement ordinance?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hale. The only action item before you today is to approve the use of alternative procurement for the Eagle Crest Gondola project. We do, however, after that motion, have the opportunity to get a project update from the project engineer and the Eagle Crest director. So to speak just specifically to alternative procurement, an ordinance to authorize alternative procurement was introduced at the last Assembly meeting. Just to roll back, what is alternative procurement? Traditional procurement is low bid. We design it. We know mostly what we want it to look like. We think we know 100% of what we want it to look like. We issue a bid and we get responses, and then we are required to choose the lowest bid. The CBJ charter was amended to allow for alternative procurement, which is very common in both government construction and private sector construction. And alternative procurement, there are many different types of alternative procurement: general GCCM, general contractor, construction manager, CMAR, construction manager at risk. But basically the model for those alternative procurements is that you issue a qualifications-based bid for the design team and the construction team at an earlier point in the process, so that the designer can meet with the contractor to work through all those issues and find the kind of best cost. So the idea is that the owner, CBJ in this case, says, we know we want X, Y, and Z, but we're not going to give you the whole alphabet soup. We're going to give you X, Y, and Z, and then it's your job to work collaboratively to come up with that. And there are advantages to alternative procurement specific to the this project that I'd like to talk about. We have this Assembly has approved alternative procurement for the SCADA project at the utility, and also for the emergency room renovation project, which got pulled by Bartlett, but is still a priority. So those are the two instances where you've authorized alternative procurement. Now, to speak briefly to why it would be a good fit for this particular project, it's a complex project. We're essentially taking some used parts from a different environment and reassembling them. So it's going to take some ingenuity, and it's very hard to know what those particular pieces are going to be right before we've kind of got them all in front of us. It's a type of project that needs specialty contractors. So you have specialty engineers, inspectors working on this project, and they have long lead times. So being able to work together with a contractor and a design team to kind of schedule all that out. There's also a lot of staff involvement, right? The Eagle Crest staff they're the experts at Eagle Crest. They know that mountain, and so being able to have that direct staff involvement would be beneficial through alternative procurement. It allows us to kind of phase the project. So some parts of the project are going to need snow roads, other parts of the project won't. And so there's a bit of a scheduling juggle here that makes it difficult for our traditional low bid. And it also provides cost certainty. So part of a alternative procurement is that early on in the process, the owner and the contractor negotiate a guaranteed maximum price. And that guaranteed maximum price is part of the ordinance that is before you. That's $6.5 million. And so basically we're saying, okay, we want X, Y, and Z, and this is how much we're willing to pay. Be creative, work collaboratively, and figure it out. So those are the reasons why, and the Best Interest Finding recommends alternative procurement for this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions about the alternative procurement for Madam Manager? Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Madam Deputy Mayor. Manager Kester, could you remind us the last CBJ project that used alternative procurement method, I can picture Mr. Watt sitting there explaining to us, and we voted on it, and we did it, but I don't remember what the project was.
Yeah,
Madam
thank you.
Manager.
The last project that you approved for alternative procurement was the emergency department renovation and addition project. That project hasn't moved forward due to other issues, but that was the last ordinance that you approved for alternative procurement.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Are there any other questions? Wahaga
Just wondering, through this process, I know that Gold Belt is financially, our partner in this, but are they also helping with, their expertise in building, gondola-esque type things?
Excellent question, Madam Manager.
It is an excellent question, and I don't have an answer that I would have to defer to Dave on that. I'm sorry, Director Scanlon.
Director Scanlon.
Thank you, Madam Manager and Madam Deputy Mayor Hale. So we are in regular collaboration with Gold Belt's project manager, Rance Brooks. He's been coming to all of our engineering weekly meetings and bi-weekly meetings. So he's very much a part and keeping his finger on the pulse of the whole design process. I've had also some additional meetings where we've talked about some joint trainings and other things like that. So as we get deeper into this and further moving along towards construction, I anticipate the same sort of involvement and maybe a little bit additional. So right now it's been a really good collaborative relationship so far.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Are there further questions? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, and this might have partially already been answered. I might have missed it, but I just wanted to make sure I got a good understanding. So part of this alternative process is that we're putting out for bid somebody who's going to serve, or possibly two somebodies who might serve in two separate roles. Okay. Would this? I'm sorry. Follow up.
Actually, would you? A nod doesn't suffice for the
Oh.
record, actually. So, Madam Manager.
Thank you. The request would be for a project team that would involve a contractor and designer and all the myriad of, subcontractors and specialists that they would employ.
Thank you. Follow up.
And would this process, I imagine this process for alternate procurement would also be competitive, like in the normal procurement process?
Madam Manager.
So it is a competitive process, but it's qualifications based instead of price based. And so that's really where it becomes different is it's the RFP's committee's job to pick the best team based on a variety of factors, including their proven history of delivering, et cetera.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Do I have a motion, Madam Mayor?
Certainly. I move that the Assembly use Eagle Crest Board of Directors' recommendation to use the GC/CM alternative procurement method as proposed in ordinance 2023-05.
Are there any objections? Ms. Euskandis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't want to do things too out of order here, so I guess I will just. We are on mic check tonight. I love it. I'll just make a brief comment, and I'm sure in a moment I'll have a time for more comments and questions. I know at this moment we are speaking just to using alternative procurement, and that does seem to be the best fit for this unique project to me. So I think I will end up removing my objection, but I can't untangle that from my mind in what is also in the packet, which is a project update. And I do have real concerns about this project based on some of the things that I'm seeing in this update. So I guess I'll save the rest of those comments and questions, but I just want to know on the record my extreme concern about aspects of this project as it goes forward. And with that, I will remove my objection.
Thank you. Did you say you'd remove your objection?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Thank you, Ms. Euskandis. Are there further objections? Seeing none, that motion passes. Now we will move on to an update from, yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. To an update from Eagle Crest staff and board members. Mr. Scanlon, can you please introduce those who are with you and then provide an update to the assembly?
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy Mayor. So with me this evening, I have Hannah Shively from our Board of Directors. I also have Norton Gregory from our board, and Norton is our chair of our planning committee for the board this year. And then we have Alan Steffert, who's our CBJ engineering project manager that's working with me hand in hand and running the project management of the project for CBJ.
Thank you, and please go ahead and proceed with your update.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So it's been a very busy fall, an exciting fall. So it took us a little while to finish dotting our I's and crossing our T's with the Gold Belt agreement. So we finally got Gold Belt's partnership capital accessible to us in the end of August. And that created an opportunity to get all of our engineers back to work and doing all of their analysis and sinking their teeth back in. So we had a little pause there where we were waiting for those funds to clear to get the team back up and working. So the last 3 months has really been focused on setting the elevation and the exact location of the Summit building, the exact location and elevation of our Midway station, and then doing all of our load calculations and coming up with exactly where the towers need to be placed to carry the full load of passengers that we anticipate for the summer, which we anticipate in the summer, we're going to have a full load going up the line and down the line. So as we went through that process, when we purchased the gondola that we purchased, we always knew we would need to purchase some additional support towers to have the Midway loading station, which is a really big component both summer and winter. In the winter, the elevation there is always above our rain and snow line, which has really hampered us at the start of the season. So as we've gone through that process, we've determined now exactly what we need for those additional parts to fabricate the Midway station and properly support the cable to have that full load going up and down the line. We've also created access to towers 1 through tower 7, snow road access and some other pioneered access to be able to go in and do all of our geotech analysis. So that's a great lead in for the construction team. And so we're very excited to now have this exact list of parts and know exactly the loading we have. So we're ready to move forward and source all those critical pieces. So that way, when we go out and advertise our RFP for this alternative procurement, we'll know that we have all the critical parts in hand to complete our design and installation the way we've envisioned it to really get the maximum functionality both summer and winter. Really excited to go into this alternative procurement. I think it's a great fit. I've got some talented staff that have done a lot of work all across the mountain, and we know we can really bring some efficiency into the project. So my quick little update there. Happy to answer any questions. That's what I love to do most, and I know there's plenty of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scanlon. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Scanlon, can you remind me of your time frame? I forgot what your time frame was. Because I think it's a little bit different for winter and then summer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our focus is to have the gondola ready for full operations in May of 26, but we really want to get it ready for the winter season of 25-26 to be able to run the gondola during the winter season, serve our skiers. And with any new equipment, there's always some adjusting, especially with all the electronic controls, and just make sure the lift is really running to its peak performance so we're ready to receive all of our summer visitors in May of 26.
Follow
up. So then you predict year-round staff to start winter of 25-26 and then just, okay.
Thank you. We have Mr. Bryson and Ms. Candies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Director Scanlon and gang for coming tonight. So when you were observing and looking at purchasing the gondola, was it made aware to you that you would need to buy almost 90% of the cost in additional parts, this 1.86 million for the parts that you've listed? So my first question is, did you know that you were going to have to buy almost $2 million worth of parts? And then was that information part of the Gold Belt's $10 million for their investment in getting this built? Were they also aware that you needed that $1.86 million? And how does that all fit into the $10 million to get it installed? I'm trying to get to the question, are you going to then come and tell us you need more money for more parts before this thing gets built? Is what I'm hoping you're going to tell me. The answer is no, but go ahead, sir.
No, thank you, Mr. Bryson. Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you through Madam Deputy Manager, Mr. Bryson. Appreciate the question. So we were aware that we would need additional towers for the Midway station. We didn't anticipate as many. We thought we were probably looking at 5 towers. Because of the heavy loading going up the line and down the line, we actually needed to support the cable a little bit more down in the lower section in between some of the big tower spans. So we weren't anticipating needing quite so many towers. And then the price of all new lifts and used lifts have just ballooned in the last 3 years since we got the original lift under contract. So the lift that we're thankfully able to source these parts from is actually being sold for $2.98 for the full lift. So the prices have just escalated a lot. So we always knew we were going to need some, but it was really hard to determine exactly where we were going to be able to source those towers. The cross arms and the size of the shiv assemblies are bigger than most lifts in North America because this is a really robust lift. And so we didn't have an exact source. Our sales company that we work with had said that they would support us and be able to find us the parts, and they've done that. But it was hard to determine at that point in time exactly what that price was. We are very confident, especially working with alternative procurement, that we can get the gondola fully installed and operational for the remaining 6.5 that we have. There's also some additional capital to pay for some other preliminary work that's being done. And in those parts, we're getting 75% of the length of the haul rope coming along with it. There's a lot of additional componentry that's coming along with this purchase.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you. Along those lines, let's just get into a hypothetical world for a second. If a city was to try and purchase a gondola in this market environment, what might a used gondola in this environment go for if for some reason we were going to look in 24 instead of in 2020 when we did?
Yes, thank you very much. So the size of gondola with that Midway station, we'd probably be looking in the 4.5. If we were to go brand new, we'd be solidly in the 30 million. That's without roads and other buildings. So that easily would balloon to 35 or 40. So the direct replacement of the one that we purchased, they were at 28 million. The one that we're getting parts off, they're spending 35 on that one. So that's kind of size and scope of what pricing's at, both new and used.
Can I make just one observation? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scandies, and then can we come back to you, Mr. Bryson? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Scandies.
Thanks, Madam Hale. Madam Chair, Madam Hale, it's got a good ring. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. I know you do love questions, and thanks, whole gang, for being here. You guys are always enthusiastic to address concerns, and I do appreciate that about you. I'm coming from kind of the same direction Mr. Bryson is, because if I had had time today and I didn't get back late last night, I was going to build a beautiful chart with red string going everywhere and clippings of things we talked about back then. Because of the steal of the deal, I'm sort of, I guess, my concern is that it feels like we bought this used gondola And now we're getting used parts for our used gondola, and it's starting to feel like we have a gondola in the garage that we're restoring. And we're that city. And we're passionate about it and we want it to work, obviously. But it is starting to feel a little sunk cost fallacy. So we heard earlier in our other meeting that the cost of things is 3 times. We've heard that with other engineering projects coming in way over. I know when we went over to examine the gondola, we brought engineers with us and you went and inspected it yourself. The naming the 6.5 million with that procurement cost, you just said you're confident that's still enough to get it up. With the escalation of everything, including used gondolas, was there, I guess, if you could talk me through a little bit what the engineer was inspecting. You said you knew you'd need some cables, or you need some towers and shims and things, but not as many as you ended up needing. What was that process like? You got it home and unpacked it, and then you did the route change? Could you just talk me through how we thought we were good then and came back and told the assembly we were good then, but now need all these parts?
Mr. Scanlon, and anytime you need to phone a friend, please do.
Thank you, through the chair. So when we went over and inspected the lift, we were really looking at the quality of the machinery in its installed location as it was. And everybody was very impressed with the quality of the machinery, with the maintenance that had been done on the machinery. At that point in time, we didn't have capital to pay the engineer to have done our full profile alignment, which is a very long process and expensive process as part of the engineering. So when we do that line profile design, we're setting those tower locations, he's doing all those load calculations. That's something that we didn't do when we went over to inspect. We went over to inspect and look at the condition of the lift. We discussed with the engineer that we wanted to design and fabricate a midway loading station, and the engineer was able to sign off that yes, the nature of the componentry of this lift would allow us to do that. So he kind of gave us the green light. Yes, this is possible. The machinery looks good. The machinery looks well cared for. And so that was the point where we decided, yes, this kind of met the intent, knowing that we were going to have to come back and get into the design. And we had enough capital from the initial ask to do some of that preliminary design work. But really, we needed to sink back in and get the whole engineering team going when we had the proper capital for them to do their extensive work.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon.
Thanks.
Follow-up? Did you want follow-up?
I'll let and see if other people have questions because it's not really a follow-up.
Okay, Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So not one of us likes to hear the cost that we had to buy a little bit more parts. We had to do, we had some unintended costs. None of us like to hear that. But the one thing that we've heard tonight is something that I don't think we've heard since I got elected. We bought an asset and it doubled in value during our ownership. I don't think that we bought a single thing as an assembly since I've sat here that has gone up in value 100% from the cost that we bought it. So while it was a tough challenge, we took, there were a couple of opportunities that if you bought right before everybody understood the impact of inflation, which is when we bought this gondola, we got a $4,000+ asset for $4 million plus for $2 million because we bought it before everybody appreciated what inflation was going to do. So we've scored on this one, and it's very rarely that a city government can say, we got a good deal, we bought at the right time. That's what's happened here. And so while I'm not really excited that there was, a couple extra parts, but that's sometimes how it goes when you got to dig in for a good deal. So I want to compliment Eagle Crest on this and the courage of the assembly, because we have not ever bought anything that has doubled in value while we own it. And now we don't even have it installed, and we're going to have the privilege of having what is costing other cities tens of millions of dollars, we're getting in, the cost of the city is $2 million. And so to have an asset like that, we've done a good job here. I just want to remind everybody, thank you very much, Madam Deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. We have Madam Mayor, and then we have Ms. Wall.
With that being said, I'm always looking for more funding. So you have quite a support group up at Eagle Crest. Have you reached out to them to try and get more funding for the Summit House or anything like that? Or have we had that kind of campaign yet?
Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you through the chair. We're still a little early. We'd like to engage with, through alternative procurement, our CMAR contractor, and really start going through all those efficiencies to see where we land, you know, and we do have an amazing support structure. You're correct with that.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope this isn't outside of the update here, but curious about the business plan and whether you know, the Assembly has been in conversations about limiting the size of cruise ship tourism moving forward. We're expecting to have flat visitorship over the next few years, and maybe even thinking about tools to reduce that. I remember seeing kind of a business plan, you know, when the gondola was approved, about kind of how much money gets made over, you know, as you ramp up visitors. Has the board kind of looked at, if I remember correctly, even a low amount of visitors was still putting Eagle Crest in a good position, but has the board had discussions about kind of the impacts of those changes on the overall sustainability of the project?
Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you through the chair, Ms. Wall. Thank you for that question. We've looked in detail of it, and this is why we're doing this. Is the numbers look really strong, and reflecting back to the intentful way that we designed our agreement with Gold Belt, they're incentivized to bring us visitors. They've already engaged with all the cruise line executives. There's a lot of enthusiasm. They want to sell those tickets today. We've scaled their percent of gross tickets that they're getting. They reach their peak at 75,000 visitors. That's a comfortable number for us. 75,000 visitors breaks down to around 450 people a day. This past summer, we were doing walking tours with Viking Cruises, and we were doing those 450 people in 4 hours and keeping them right at the base area. You know, so that was a really good experiment for us to see, like, okay, how do we manage that many visitors? And so when we're spreading them across the mountain, we've got so much capacity to handle visitors. And even with flatline visitation, I think 75,000 visitors is a great way for us to start looking at the revenue that can come in from that. And I'm actually starting to meet with the finance department. I've got a meeting on Wednesday, starting to build that all into the FY 25-26 budget. So really excited to bring that back forward to you guys. I think you're going to be really happy with what you're going to see.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Ms. Euskandis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just another one. That's exciting to hear, those numbers. That's great. Mr. Bryson, it sounds like you're saying we have an asset we could sell if we wanted to for the first time. Oh, you guys, we just earned $2 million. I'm teasing. I'm joking. Or am I? No, I do want it to succeed. I just want to understand the parts question more. Yes. Is there any way, knowing that, and I'll say that all these questions come from a real fear on my part, that when I see the number 6.5 million, I think, how on earth are you going to set it up for 6.5 million? So I haven't heard of anything getting built for 6.5 million, it seems like, in forever, just because of inflation. But I believe it's happening if it is. But is there any way we can set it up as it is now, just so I can understand that? Or with what we have, we just can't do it because of the shape of our mountain or whatever?
Thank you, through the chair. Ms. Euskandis, we could. However, it would greatly degrade the value of the installation. So we could set it up as it is, but we wouldn't have the Midway loading station. And that's going to be a huge, huge portion of our summer attraction. So people are going to be able to get off at that Midway loading station. We have a nice gravel trail that's going to go up to Cropley Lake with a nice picnic pavilion. The views there are amazing. It'll also be a great spot for us to do winter snow tubing, so we can bring non-skiing Juneauites up to the mountain in the winter and give them something to do. It's going to be world-class Nordic skiing. The Biathlon Club is really talking to us. They want to do something. So there's all these opportunities that become possible when we have that Midway station, both summer and winter.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. I wanted to ask the board members present if you had anything you'd like to add before we keep proceeding. Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Chair Hale, or Deputy Mayor Hale. So my name is Norton Gregory. I am an Eagle Crest board member. Prior to this, I was on the Assembly and I was the Eagle Crest liaison. It's nice to be a part of this project. It's also nice to be in front of the Assembly to answer questions that come up. I feel that we don't get an opportunity to be in front of the Assembly frequently. I would like to extend an invitation to all of you in your free time. The last Thursday of every month, we hold a planning committee meeting where we discuss these issues. It's also a great place to voice any questions or concerns you have and hear updates from us on a monthly basis about what's going on with this project. And just very excited for this project, excited for Juneau and what it's going to do for our mountain.
Mr. Gregory, thank you so much. I have forgotten your last name.
My name is Hannah Shively.
Shively, I'm so sorry. How could I forget that?
No.
Ms. Shively, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm a board member at Eagle Crest. My primary qualification is really being passionate about Eagle Crest, and that's one of the reasons I'm in Juneau at all, is that this amazing opportunity exists here. And I also second, we would love to have more folks at the planning committees, more time to dig into the numbers and the specifics of why we think 450 is going to work, where all that revenue is going to come from and then going to go once again. It's really encouraging because it just seems like an amazing opportunity really to make Eagle Crest self-sufficient and kind of create that just so many build-on opportunities for quality of life. Once we're untethered from the winter weather and we're less reliant on that ever-changing qualification, Eagle Crest becomes a much more, just the possibilities kind of escalate from there. So this is really the thick of it, trying to get through to that point, but it seems really encouraging all around.
Thank you very much, and I think we have a great example of being tethered to winter weather at the moment, don't we? I also just wanted to point out, and I think we talked about this in our retreat, we don't have enough shore excursions now. I toured the Disney ship this past year, and I was kind of shocked to find out, and I think this number is correct, that only 65% of the people that want shore excursions in Juneau get them because there aren't enough shore excursions. So that's why whale watching is so maxed out. So I see this helping stable funding in the future, not an eventual draw from the Assembly, and then providing those shore excursions and dispersing people out away from town. I think that probably is it for questions. And I just want to thank all of you. Brief, Mr. Bryson? Okay, thank you.
Director Scanlon, had the gondola been operational, would that have changed with the opening date? Would have made it sooner or what?
Thank you for that excellent question. And yes, it would have. We would have made our opening day. Yeah. So when we have weather like this is exactly what we're talking about. And the terrain at the Midway station is actually probably better first-time learning terrain than our Porcupine beginner area. So, 100%.
Great question, Mr. Bryson. I want to thank you all for coming here and sitting through the meeting. I really appreciate your being here, really appreciate everything that all of you are doing. And I think we can move on from this subject. Do we have any staff reports, Madam Manager? Oh, we have one more item. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think you care about this item. Oh, you probably you do care about this item, but not in the same way. Thank you. Madam Manager, the last item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hale. The next item in your packet was introduced at the last regular assembly meeting and referred to this committee for discussion. It is an ordinance appropriating additional general funds to the tune of 1.6 million to the Affordable Housing Fund to be able to fully award the first recommended project from the Affordable Housing Fund Committee and the second recommended project. Both of these projects are loans. So I do have some information on the projects, but I also know that you're familiar with this ordinance and these projects because it's been introduced already. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Manager. And I'll go to Ms. Wall with a question. Are you actually looking for an action from the Assembly tonight? Do we need to forward this on to the full Assembly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, super. Ms. Wall, you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think maybe I'm requiring some clarity. What's in front of us here in the packet is kind of about the money, having additional money in the Affordable Housing Fund, kind of the merits of the two projects, and whether those are the ones I know we got a recommendation. I'm not suggesting that I don't want to fund them, but I'm curious, like, are we going to discuss them, or is the plan what was introduced? What we will see at the next Assembly meeting will be giving the go-ahead to those two projects, or just putting money in the fund and we will tackle the projects at a later date.
This is kind of a chicken and
I
egg
just
question,
don't-
Ms.
I
Wall.
just want to
Very
make
good
sure
question. Yeah,
I understand.
thank you.
With no judgment around how it should go down.
Madam Manager.
Thank you for that question. From what I understand, but I would be happy to lean on my colleagues here who've been through this process before. This ordinance would allow the top two loan agreements to be issued into, but there would still be Assembly action required to award those loans and negotiate and approve those loans.
Yes, please.
Follow-up would be, what would be the timeline for that action?
That's a great question, and I'm sorry I don't have that specifically written out in a memo before you, but I do know the intention is to move relatively quickly so that these projects can both begin in the next construction season, so soon.
Follow on to that question, Madam Manager, has the full Assembly seen these projects? I sat in on a lands meeting where they were being discussed, but maybe that's why this question is coming up. I don't know that the full Assembly has actually seen and agreed to these projects.
You're correct. I believe it was the Lands Committee and referred it to the Finance Committee. And what we did in order to try to stay on a timeline is introduce it at the last meeting and refer it to this committee. So that's why this feels a little bit awkward.
Mr. Smith.
I guess I was just chiming in that, as my remembrance of the process, the Lands Committee reviews and kind of approves there's like an advisory group who recommends these projects. And then we move that forward, and then the full Assembly would see loan agreements or appropriating ordinances. Isn't that how it usually, like, the full Assembly shouldn't have seen the projects yet in typical course, correct?
I think we're doing a little quick research on this. So, yeah, okay. I think Madam Mayor is just saying maybe just bring this information to the Assembly once we understand the process. We've been through it before, but we all have to refresh ourselves. Thanks for that, Mr. Smith. Are there further questions or comments at this point? Ms. Wall and Ms. Oh,
Thank you. I don't, this may be a question for Ms. Flick. I don't know if she's here, but if both of these, if the assembly decides to use this funding as loans, does the money stay on the books? We're not giving the money out. Will the Affordable Housing Fund still say that we have whatever 2 point something dollars, or even if we approve these projects?
Mr. Attorney, are you taking that?
I'll take the initial crack at that, and Ms. Flick can definitely advise us if I get this wrong. So the big picture concept with this ordinance is that it would put money into the Affordable Housing Fund for use, and it would then be available for the Assembly's purposes as it sees fit. So whenever that project comes up, and then historically in the past, I'm thinking of one of the more recent projects we did, the Ridgeview project, the rooftop project, the project out near kind of Fred Meyer, the old area. That project was approved by the Assembly with an appropriating ordinance with terms and conditions in that appropriating ordinance. So that could be a model that the Assembly could use once this money's in that Affordable Housing Fund.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
If I can follow with staff offline to make sure I understand. Thanks.
Great. And Ms. Euskendis is next, but I also wanted to make a comment segueing off of the terms and conditions associated with that project. We know that we continue to advocate for affordable housing. It's the point of the fund. So we want to make sure that those terms and conditions in the applications end up in the projects. So Mr. Euskendis, did you have a question? Oh, did you have a question?
Thanks, Ms. Hale. It was just a general end of the meeting, quick comment, but it wasn't on this item.
It was not on this topic? Okay, well, Hagedorn and then Mr. Bryson.
Yeah, Ms. Hill, you hit the nail on the head, because that was the question I asked during the housing meeting, because, you know, we've been through this process of doling out loan funds and then having a project come back to us and saying, well, we can't actually create any affordable housing. And so how do we ensure that we actually have projects that maintain affordable housing within their scope? And so I appreciate that, you know, the caveat that this is required. We're giving you this loan because you are saying you're going to construct affordable housing. You don't get to come back to us later and say, well, it's not feasible. Then you can go to a bank. You don't need to come to the Assembly for money. So sorry, that wasn't really a question.
It sounded like a question. Hagedorn. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. But going along the lines with what I think what Ms. Wool was getting at what point will we see enough funds being repaid back into the loan, so that way we had additional funds that we could loan out? Could we maybe just get a timeline after 3 years, so much money would have been paid back to the loan, and that would be available in year like 2028 or something like that? If we could just get a sense of, this is the money you've loaned out in a 3 or 5 or 10 year timeline, this amount of money should technically be paid back into the fund, to give us an idea of how sustainable our actions have been. Is it kind of where you were getting at too? All right. Thank you.
I don't know that we have the expertise here tonight to answer that question.
No, but I'd be happy to bring that back to you with a timeline when you do review these specific projects.
I suspect none of us will be on the Assembly when that fund starts being replenished. All right, you'll be on the Assembly. Are there any Mr. Smith, that's right.
Sorry, actually, I was going to go for a motion so we can see if there are more questions.
Please do.
Very good. I would move ordinance 2023-14BR to the full Assembly for public hearing and Assembly action at the next Assembly meeting, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, that ordinance passes, and now we can move on to staff reports. Like, I tried to rush past this one, and it's very important. Madam Manager, are there any staff reports?
No.
How cool is that? Our next meeting date really is January 29th. That's amazing. So the next meeting of the Committee of the Whole will be January 29th. Thank you for being here. And Madam Mayor is flashing her hand here.
Just quickly, Gino lost a great person of our community this weekend. If people knew George Reifenstein, he passed away on Saturday. And if you don't know him and his wife put together the dialysis center. So just wanted to wish him and his family well, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
And happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy all the things.
Everything else, and I agree, Merry Christmas, and I hadn't heard that about George, so that's really, really sad. Happy holidays, everyone, and enjoy, all of us, our incredibly well-deserved break. So take a break if you can. And this meeting is adjourned.